You are listening to Personalization Outbreak, a podcast about the collapse of traditional corporate standards in today's more personalized world. I'm Glenn Yopes. I'm a leadership strategist, author, contributor to Forbes, and founder of the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement. On this show, I'm interviewing executives across multiple sectors to find out how the balance between standardization and personalization can exist. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Personalization Outbreak Podcast. Today we're going to be turning obstacles into opportunities with our guest who has this incredible knack. Just wait till you meet Mike. This guy he's a special guy. I also told him that I think he could also be in politics. Now, before you start judging Mike, what is it? He's very soothing. He'll bring a sense of calmness, and he really cares about the things that he addresses and he does for his clients and the communities that he serves. But see, he has this knack for seeing opportunity in a story. He sees beneath the narrative. He takes the time to see opportunity where other people see challenges. See, today you're going to be meeting our guest, Mike Valdes-Fauli. He's a Chief Operating Officer of Chemistry and the President of the Multicultural Division, Chemistry Cultura, one of the fastest growing agencies in the United States, serving clients like Carnival Cruise Lines, Comcast, Domino's, Heineken, and many others, including the NFL. Now, with remarkable ability to reframe complex issues, you'll see how Mike will address this untapped opportunity to drive business and economic growth by understanding disruptive topics that could actually drive real growth. Such as the Hispanic market, the Hispanic community. We know how fast that community is growing. Or how about AI, artificial intelligence, disruptive across all industries, entrepreneurship. Or how about this one, DE&I? You see, whether you're an executive looking for actionable insights or an entrepreneur seeking inspiration, Mike's going to help you turn uncertainties as stepping stones to success. Mike, great to have you. And look, I'm really appreciative of your time and that you're going to be sharing your wisdom with our audience today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you and share what I can with your audience, Glenn. Thank you for the warm introduction, mentioning that soothing voice. I'm not sure my wife at home would agree, but I'll do my best.
Well, come on, let's just put things into perspective. You can take things that are complicated and almost smoothen them out. And I think that this is just part of your demeanor and who you are as an individual. And in fact, what I like to do is let's see how this stuff operates on the fly right now. I'm going to share, if it's okay with you, just 3 statements. And I like you to give me a sense of how people might be interpreting these statements, and then how would you reframe them so people could see the opportunity in them? Is that okay?
I'm ready. Shoot.
Okay. Here we go. Number 1, rethink, reframe, redefine. Sounds like a very catchy tagline. What would you say?
Well, I think some people might view it as a bit of a corny poster that you see in some coach's office, but I actually think they're words to live by. I feel like you shouldn't go into life with a preconceived notion based on your knowledge or others that have come before. You really should look at everything with open eyes and take a fresh look, because you might be surprised what's revealed. Well,
I think that, nice job. This takes us to the second one. Opportunities are everywhere, yet few have eyes to see them.
Well, I'll talk a little bit about that today, because it's one of the things I'm most passionate about. Where the opportunities are obvious, everyone is sprinting in that direction already and has for generations. The trick is obviously to uncover new opportunity, both for yourself as well as the community at large. And so I think one of the most, sort of superpowers that people should strive for is to look a little bit beneath the surface, or choose your metaphor to rise above it and take a more holistic viewpoint. So I think uncovering untapped opportunity is about as critical as it gets.
Mike, why do you think people have this tendency to place bets on what they know?
I think it's natural to feel more comfortable in your own wheelhouse, in your comfort zone. But that's not where growth happens. An obvious cliche is that you learn more in failure than in success. And I really believe that, not only in failure, but stepping outside of where you feel safe. And obviously you want comfort and safety in your home, but especially as it pertains to, your pursuits, your hobbies, and especially your workplace, exactly at the point where you feel like you're over your skis is perhaps, the moment where the opportunity will reveal itself. When you get out of that comfort zone, great things can happen. The trick is not only to find the opportunity, but to get comfortable in the discomfort.
So, I hear that a lot, getting comfortable with the discomfort. Do you have a tangible example of what that can look like? You just make something up on the fly, Mike. What's that look like?
Sure. I can relate it to my own career. I've spent, the better part of 22, 23 years in marketing, advertising, PR. And the phases of my career have been a series of trying to get out of what I was already good at and learn a new skill that I was decidedly not very good at. And so the pursuit of constant improvement sounds good on paper, but it's quite scary and painful in reality. I started as a sort of PR guy and then tried to pivot to advertising and then try to pivot from there to the business side of things, whether it's through M&A or the financial management of the agencies. And so I wasn't born with any of those skills, but it took some effort to push myself out of that comfort zone, fall in public and have to get back up. But ultimately, as I look in the rearview mirror, it proved quite successful to get more comfortable with that discomfort.
Well, let's go into some topics, Mike, that some might feel a little bit uncomfortable about.
Yep.
So this first one is about the Hispanic opportunity, the Hispanic market opportunity. I mean, let me just kind of tee this up for you. 63 million Hispanics, nearly 20% of them in America, in the United States, 3.4 trillion contribution to the GDP, the world's fifth largest economy. I think that people have probably heard those numbers. But why is it that they don't know what to do with those numbers? And what is it that can lead organizations to see significant economic growth, not just in their brands and business, but more influence within the community itself? So let me back up a minute. We have this opportunity. Excluding those that are already playing in this space, because obviously you're doing some great work with some, top-notch brands. What do those who haven't explored this opportunity think of it? And what do you do to help them see it?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, it's a great question. I'm really passionate about this community from which I come. My father's a Cuban immigrant. My mother is Tex-Mex, or Tejana, as we say. And so even though I'm a very, very proud American citizen and was born here in the United States, I think the diaspora that includes diverse cultures coming together, colliding, sharing, assimilating, all of that has always fascinated me on a cultural level. But pivoting to the more economic side of it, it's just a huge opportunity. And you said it with some of the stats, but think about the critical importance of America on the global economy. And for every American entrepreneur, how important our own backyard is. In our backyard, 1 in 5 Americans today is Hispanic. So when you frame it in that, whether you're selling shoelaces or soda pop or pizza, would you ignore 1 in 5 Americans as you go to market? And when you frame it that way, you start to think, okay, maybe it's an important challenge, but people fear the unknown. And I know we'll talk maybe a little bit more about this today, but the polarization and politicization of everything, has made even things like talking about the Hispanic opportunity a little bit divisive. And I'm really not someone that will make an argument on political lines. I think it's really about what makes sense for our economy. And 63 million people with a household income that is rising should be a consumer market for anything. If you're scared of dipping your toe, that's understandable. Perhaps I could offer a couple of pieces of advice. And, one of them is to we always say, think about it from insights, not stereotypes. So do a little bit of homework, uncover where your product or service is a market fit with the Latino community, and perhaps start small with a campaign that, sort of is respectful, but ultimately can prove dividends, not starting with cliches and tropes.
I want to correct myself and thank you for calling me on it without even doing it, that the 63 million people represent 20% of the United States. So 20% of the United States population are Hispanic.
That's correct.
And I'm sure you're going to go into this next generation of Hispanics are going to be dominating marketplaces and consumerism on another level. But I want to touch on something a moment. You said fear of the unknown. Okay. What happens when we place a bet on the known knowns? And are there any known knowns that you believe are starting to fade fast?
Well, I think just, an obvious one would be markets are getting saturated. So if you're Domino's, Pizza Hut, Papa John's, and you're all targeting the exact same consumer, you have been using the same tactical mix of TV spots and digital advertising, there's a law of diminishing returns. At some point, you're kind of beating each other up, going after the same market with the same message. So that is a known that perhaps won't prove dividends in the future as it has in the past. Another one, obviously, and we talked a little bit about it, is getting outside of that comfort zone. And that's not just for individuals like us, Glenn, but also for companies. If you're not cannibalizing your own business and reinventing yourself and thinking about what the future holds, not just what proved successful in the past, you're probably going to hit a wall at some point. So, that the perpetual discovery of what's around the corner and getting yourself comfortable with kind of dipping a toe there.
So let's go back to the opportunity here with this Hispanic market. I mean, clearly you've pointed some things out that people should be examining further. But what's maybe coming in this market, this population that people don't know about yet?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say the first thing is Hispanics over-index on all things digital. So you might think, even well-intentioned people might think, well, it's a big market, but they're probably low socioeconomic status, unacculturated, not tech savvy. And really, that's not the case. The Latino market, even as compared to just Anglo general market, over-indexes on sharing multimedia content, TikTok usage, streaming, sports, and entertainment. And so, I think that makes it easier for companies to engage and approach Hispanics because they're communicating just as we are on all things technology. Second one is language, where we're seeing what was for many years a Spanish dominant first generation recently arrived immigrant group. Now he or she have had kids, and sometimes those kids have had kids. So that second and third generation is really fluidly interacting with English, Spanish, and what's really cool these days is Spanglish. We say that even though it's still polarizing, being Hispanic in many ways recently has become cool. You look at, Shakira, doing a halftime show with J-Lo. You look at 4 of the last 5 years, the top streamed artist on Spotify was a Latino. And so that has made the immigrant population's kids feel like they don't need to immediately pretend they're not Hispanic and sprint only in the direction of English, but now preserving some of that culture. We use the term 200%ers, which is it's okay that they feel 100% American and 100% Latino.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us what the number one selling beer in America is.
Yeah, Modelo.
Modelo, right. No, tell us the significance of that. I mean, I think that's a case study of what you're already telling us about, isn't it?
It is. It combines 2 case studies, if you will. One, in regards to the DEI debate, left, right, and center, Bud Light obviously was one of the inflection points of that with their trans campaign that didn't go so well. Whether or not you agree with the intent, there's no question from a business perspective, it didn't work out so well. And so that's one kind of case study that a lot of people in my industry are deconstructing. But simultaneous to that, you had this little engine that could of Modelo beer becoming the default choice for Hispanics, which, as we said, is 20%, but also beginning to lean into feeling like they can, target anyone, whether it's Asian American, LGBTQ, male, female, Anglo, etc. And they started doing a robust and expensive promotional and marketing effort with partnerships in sports, entertainment, TV spots. And while Bud Light was, struggling, at the same time, these guys really leapt ahead by focusing on what they do best.
Well, tell us a little bit about the connection between Hispanics in the NFL.
Yeah, there's a wonderful one. I'm proud to play a small part with my agency serving as the Hispanic communications firm for the NFL for about 8 seasons. And the majority, the lion's share of credit should go to the league. I mean, if you just think about the sport is tough not to watch. It's so entertaining. They do an incredible job on and off the field. And it would be odd for 20% of America to not catch on at some point. But they've also been purposeful in communicating through culture, in giving back to these communities and partnering with Latino organizations, creating a Latino Youth Honors Awards, raising the profile of the Latino players who are on the field, honoring legends that came before. So it's been with a lot of intent and a methodical approach, and it's really, really paid off. It's now for the most popular sport in America for Hispanics, and it was soccer for many years. So you're seeing tangible results to that effort.
Well, that's where I wanted to go. This is the sport that they love.
Right.
And it's interesting because someone listening to this might be saying, oh, there goes that DE&I thing again. Or is it that maybe they're just starting to take your advice, and others, of course, on how to start preparing for a population that has never been let into the sport?
That's right. That's right. I think if you're look at it through that lens, which I think is brilliant, that they've never been welcomed. They've never felt like there was something there for them. They've never felt the the opportunity to engage there. But if you just reach out a hand and do it in a culturally relevant, respectful way, remember I mentioned the insights, not stereotypes, you'll be shocked at the ROI that you get. So I'm not espousing that any of this is to check a box as the right thing to do. I'm saying this is a competitive business advantage.
Well, and I think it's more examples like this that help get us to begin to reframe things such as DE&I. Let's go into that one. I know that this can be a very divisive topic, and that's not what we're here to discuss today. But how do you shift the focus from its perceived complexity to opportunity for businesses and brands, Mike?
The sort of North Star in my industry is Don Draper. You may remember that show from Mad Men, but he had a great quote among many others that was, if you don't like what they're saying about you, change the conversation. And I think it's way past time that we do that as it pertains to DE&I. As you said, I don't want to get political. I think the issue is too polarizing as it is. But as with any issue, I believe, I really do, I'm not being Pollyannish or naive, that there's a way to find common ground. And rather than focus on an acronym that has so much loaded, hypercharged elements to it, why don't we pick individual issues without naming them anything that feels either too conservative or too woke, and tackle those problems together to everyone's mutual benefit. I'll give you an example of a similar thing that I experienced. I live down in Miami, and there's a very polarized political climate here with the most conservative and liberal people living in one community. And climate change is certainly at the top of those divisive lists. But here, we stopped calling it climate change or global warming, and we identified a problem of sea level rise. And regardless of what side of the political spectrum you sit on, you're looking at the sea level rising year over year. Our very important waterfront real estate prices were going down. We had increased coastal flooding whenever there was just even a moderate storm. So you can't deny that. But rather than talk about what caused it or whether it's happening in Antarctica, let's tackle this problem together. And that was a tangible benefit to everyone here in Miami by reframing the issue with words. A narrative can matter, and then finding common ground that everyone can agree on.
So again, this is a little bit, maybe a little off topic, but I want your perspective on this, or you could just pass. When you think about, as you said, these politically polarized, charged acronyms, right? Or even words like climate change, and there's a host of them. How long do you think it would take to get beyond those words so that we're maybe saying the same thing, using other words?
Yeah, I think it's whether it's short or a long time, we have to start now. I think it's important that together we try to reframe these issues. You're seeing it a lot with the new administration. People that weren't necessarily, bedfellows before have now begun to find ways to mutual benefit with the Trump administration and their respective company or organization. It doesn't mean they will agree on everything. That will never happen. So let's not make that the primary goal. It can't be that we agree on everything or we fight. Why don't we disagree on these 4 things, find 3 that we agree on, and then go make the world a bit better by only focusing on those? And I think in the DEI space, the way that I would frame it is get rid of the acronym, but don't cower from some of the tangible benefits that come from a more diverse workforce and a more diverse target audience for your product or service.
Given the type of work that you and your organization does, Mike, kind of take me into one of your, without mentioning any of the clients, but take us into one of these meetings that you have to talk about topics like we've discussed today. I get a sense in society that there's this struggle between just having to be right about something versus seeking understanding. And as I hear you talk, that's why I'm bringing this up. I think you're calling for people to just take a step back and let's just understand what's happening all around us, right? Because when we get stuck in our old ways, we begin to lose touch with the changing world around us. And I think this is one of your underlying messages here, is that we have to take a moment, and regardless of what might make you angry or make you happy, what's the right thing to do?
Sure.
And so take me into this, because I have to believe that there's some healthy tension going on here, because not everybody has the patience, let alone maybe the intellect and preparation to seek understanding. I don't know. What do you think about this topic, Mike?
You're right about one thing, that there's a lot of tension, particularly right now. And so if you are the longstanding Hispanic marketing agency for a big company, I'll take you up on not naming names, particularly right now.
Not important.
And then DEI is blowing up in every newspaper across America. You can bet we're getting a lot of those calls for our perspective and what would be our recommendation. And there's some very intense debate inside these companies where they're terrified. Really, they don't want to get attacked, and that makes sense. They're trying to make money for shareholders, for themselves, for their families, and that makes sense. But at the same time, beyond the fact that some of this would be the right thing to do, it's also short-sighted for the business to just retreat completely, I believe. You got to remember that part of this is internal, meaning DEI, about diversifying and making a more inclusive workplace. A big part of it is external. You should be able to market to 20% of America to grow your shareholders' value and stock price. And all of it has been sort of looped into this toxic cocktail of politics rather than a little bit more reason. So what I've been telling them is it's got to be nuanced. It's got to be methodical. You've got to frame it in a business sense and less in a social or political sense. To the extent it's a big company and you can reach out to the administration and work with them on some of this rather than surprise them or ignore them, which we're seeing from some of our clients. So, sort of facing it head on, standing your ground in terms of your principles, but being flexible on how those are communicated and executed.
So let's move to another topic, Mike, around artificial intelligence. Again, this is often met with a lot of anxiety and disruption across all industries. How do you reframe that fear into a conversation about the opportunities that AI brings to industries, much like yours in advertising and marketing?
Yeah, and there's really no industry that won't be impacted, whether now or certainly in the future. And mine is no exception. We feel, I'll start kind of micro and tell you about how we're thinking about it, and then maybe pivot to a broader perspective. But within our space, we feel pretty inoculated from that disruption or disintermediation. As you know, Glenn, a fancy word for are they going to need the middleman of an agency, or can these companies just use ChatGPT to do their marketing for them? And I think there are some elements of every industry, like if you're just doing translations or just doing video production with stock imagery, maybe some of those things are going to be in a bit of trouble sooner. But when you're creating the big idea for a brand, and it's inherently going to have a human spark, AI is incredible at consuming everything that's already happened and come before and giving you the best answer, but it's not creating anything new. Think about that. It consumes everything it's read, and then it will give you a synopsis based on what it thinks you want to hear, but it's not going to invent just do it. It's not going to invent the Apple 1984 commercial. Things that are breakthrough ideas that sort of change the game, that's beyond, at least for now, its purview. And we feel like we're in that seat of creating a big idea for our clients. Second thing is, if you're a chief marketing officer from some of these Fortune 500 brands, which is the purchaser of my services, he or she doesn't really want to be disintermediated either. If it's that easy, then he or she doesn't have a job either. So they want to find 5 agencies and make them compete for their business and say, I picked chemistry because they're the most creative. So it doesn't really behoove anyone to dramatically disrupt entire industries yet. So that's as it pertains to advertising. But I do think, Glenn, there's ways to use it to our benefit. So everyone talks about the fear of what it will do to get rid of you, instead of talking about, shoot, what can we do to make ourselves better, more efficient, more cost effective? And in our space, we're doing A/B testing better than ever. So come up with 2 campaigns instead of having to take 3 weeks and talk to 1,000 people over the phone. You can get a pretty good sense from AI what will work in a snap of your fingers. Another one would be research and analytics. It's getting a lot easier to uncover data and insights about your consumers. And lastly, you've got sort of a really smart way to optimize campaigns. So it used to be, we're putting $5 million on the Super Bowl spot. I hope it works. Now you're deploying this money, and every day you're shifting. Oh, that didn't work. I'm moving it to what worked and doubling down there. So it allows you to be smarter with your business as well as that of your clients.
I love what you're saying. So let's take a step back. AI is out of control. I mean, the narratives are all over the place. What do you think when someone hears about AI? What do you think they think it means?
The average consumer, you mean?
Average consumer.
Average consumer probably conjures Terminator 2 and a dystopian future where we're all in physical trouble, not just economic trouble, and probably sees some benefits, but that are beyond their comprehension, because so much of the narrative today, we're going back to that word narrative, is negative. We're not talking about scientific breakthroughs or the capacity to educate underprivileged children across the world, where teachers are not as available. And so there's use cases that are going to be incredibly powerful and positive. We're not focusing on them. So unfortunately, the term AI does not conjure much good at the moment.
Okay, watch where I'm going with this. So if that's the commoner that's not an expert at these things, what are the dangers of the narratives that they can create that then further multiply to then create other narratives that don't even exist, but are an offshoot of all this negativity? Yep. What's the broader impact?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's going to be less trust, I think, because we didn't have too much of it already, right? But if you enter with conspiracy theorists who are a little less educated than they are opinionated, then you're going to have the thought that, well, the election was rigged by AI. The politician who said that was just the face technology of AI replacing, a fake person. They're going to be, putting AI in vaccines to track me. Any number of different things that may arise. That I think the more powerful yet misunderstood a technology, the more likelihood people are going to fear it and create their own conspiracy.
Okay, here's where I'm trying to go back, and I'm going back on my notes. So you talked earlier about the fear of the unknown, and then I asked you about the known. What you just said, and I wasn't setting you up for this, I just know who you are. You said in so many words, and correct me if I'm wrong, when narratives spiral out of control, it slows down the need and want to innovate, because now you're not just trying to latch on to an opportunity. Now you're fighting against the negative narratives that may backfire your adoption of that particular innovation.
Absolutely.
You see where I'm going? So go ahead. You have an opinion. Go. I'm just throwing this out because look what happens, and this is why we need you. Is that if these narratives, if we can't get out in front of this before circumstances force their hand, then that impacts everybody negatively. I don't know. You jump in here, Mike.
Couldn't have said it better. I don't have much to add other than, yeah, it's a vicious cycle. And it goes, it harkens to another major problem, which is our news polarization, right? I think there used to be vast disagreement, but we would sort of agree on a central set of facts. And whether you liked him or didn't, Walter Cronkite would say something and no one said he's lying or it's fake news. So again, this is happening left, right, and center. I'm in no way making whether it's Fox News or MSNBC, I think there's a sense that the listeners or viewers are in an echo chamber and sort of, doubling down on their already preconceived notions rather than perhaps getting outside of that comfort zone to learn and empathize about the other side. AI fits right into that. Whatever you're hearing is going to be exacerbating your fear rather than creating a desire for innovation.
So I hope everyone just heard what Mike said, even though he didn't say it the way I'm going to say it. He just told us the importance of learning, unlearning, relearning, repeat. And if we don't start unlearning, there are consequences. So let's go to entrepreneurship.
Happy or tough?
What mindset or practices do you think help entrepreneurs see opportunities hidden within the unpredictable nature of today's economy?
So I can share sort of some of the hard-earned insights from my career where I've stumbled and figured out what works and what doesn't. But the first is try to become an expert in your field, your marketplace, not just your company. Meaning, if you are the VP of finance or the VP of marketing or the VP of HR, whatever the function is at an organization, I think you're going to serve your career very well and your company by not just head down, getting the spreadsheet done and sending it by the deadline to your boss, but thinking, what are others that are in my competitive landscape doing? What are some best practices out there? What are some cautionary tales and key learnings of what not to do? But that sense of getting a broader perspective, I think, is really, really critical at every step of your career. And similar point, we talked earlier about that rising above, just visualizing, getting a 30,000 foot view rather than mired on the ground. That's going to open up so many opportunities. If you want to truly, break through and become a leader in an organization, it's not going to be just by the core skill set that got you there. You're going to have to spot trends. You're going to have to explore, hey, is it better that we do this through a joint venture rather than build it ourselves? I never thought I could go international, but there's a distribution partner. And that only comes where you sort of take a step back from the day-to-day. As a very tactical bit of advice, that only comes if you give yourself time. And so I actually calendar chunks as if they were an important client meeting for me to go walk and just get out of my headspace. And sometimes, whether it's the gym or being outdoors, your best ideas will come, or you'll realize, shoot, I was really going to screw that up. But you wouldn't have noticed it if you're just frenetically sitting there from meeting to meeting. So the importance of getting to know your industry, not just your company, rising above to think about things at a higher level, and then making the time, regardless of whether it seems like you have it, to allow those things to happen.
So I've said for years that entrepreneurship, to be an entrepreneur, doesn't mean that you have to be an entrepreneur. To be entrepreneurial doesn't mean you need to be an entrepreneur. You just have to have an entrepreneurial mindset. Where have these moments come into play for you in how you framed a problem that led to a major transformation?
Very well said, by the way. I like the framing of that. And I've been an entrepreneur for about 10 years, but I was an employee trying to have an entrepreneurial mindset before that. One example was very, very early in my career. Actually, the first job out of college, I got a job with it's a big holding company called Omnicom, and they have a PR firm called Fleischman Hillard. And the Washington, D.C. office of Fleischman was 162 employees. And on day one, they give you your packet to sign, they show you where your cubicle is, and they gave me the phone list with people's extensions. And I looked down and looked at the last names and the extensions. And to my best guess, I was the only Latino out of 162 people. And that's a moment in an entrepreneurial mindset where, you could sort of feel embarrassed, you could cower, you could try to pretend you're just, another notch on the bet. But, instead, rather than run away from that, I kind of chose to lean into it. And it wasn't long after that, I was looking for jobs doing Hispanic communications or marketing, because I felt that was an interesting niche. So what could have been a problem or an obstacle has really become the fuel to ignite my career.
Well, look, Mike, I know that we went a little bit over time, and I appreciate everything that you've shared. Do you have any maybe closing comments or just a another bite-sized piece of wisdom you'd like to share?
Well, first of all, thank you, Glenn. This has been a lot of fun, and keep doing what you're doing, because it's fascinating, heady stuff that you're covering, but always with actionable tidbits for your listeners and viewers. So yeah, I think I've said some of it, but be curious about the world around you, be open to new ideas. And when you uncover an opportunity, then you got to work your butt off and attack it with great zeal. But really the breakthrough things that are going to grow your career exponentially are only going to come when you get outside of that comfort zone.
Well, look, I appreciate your words, and talk about a little heady. I've learned that surface level thinking has a place, but we live in a time now where we need to get below the surface. And you know what I've learned? That creates a lot of discomfort, because once you go below the surface, it begins to reveal you. And this is why you've been successful, because you've never been afraid to get your hands dirty and to go below the surface and discover things that no one ever took the time to look for. So, Mike, thanks so much for your time. I've certainly appreciated this conversation, and I hope to continue and have many conversations in the future.
Feelings mutual. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Mike. And as we leave every show, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't. Do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence says quit. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Personalization Outbreak. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. If you enjoyed the content, visit ageofpersonalization.com to check out our free streaming video series and learn how to get involved in the movement. I'm Glenn Yopes. I wish you a good day, and remember, without strategy, change is merely substitution, not evolution.